Hey, what is good everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you are having an excellent day. And so in today's video, what exactly are we going to try to learn about, right? Well, I know a lot of you guys have been asking me for a lot more Android content on this channel. So we are finally back with a brand new Android series. And in this series, we are going to try to learn how to build out a fully functional chat application using the kind of relatively new Kotlin programming language. Now, one sore spot about Kotlin is that the documentation and the amount of blog posts that you can find regarding Kotlin, it's just not as rich compared to good old Java. And so this isn't too much of a problem, but sometimes when you're trying to search for solutions, it's just not as easy to do so. All right, so the second question we have to ask about this series is, what does our application look like? Well, on the left side of your screen over there, we have two emulators set up. And right now, I would like to give you a demo as to most of the major functionality of our application. So let me briefly explain what's going on here because you'll find it pretty confusing. So basically on the left side, this emulator, I have user A signed in, and inside of the Pixel 2 emulator in the middle, I have user B. So in order to reduce the amount of confusion that you're going to experience, let me just sign out of user B over here. And so this is the registration screen. I can sign in with a username, email, or password, and then I can just register and I'll sign up for a new account. But that's not exactly what I want to do. Instead, I would like to log back into the user that I have set up already. And I have johnsnow100@gmail.com. And for the password, I'll just punch in 123, hit the enter button, and I'll log back in. And upon logging back in, I'll get all of my latest messages inside of this recycler view component. All right, so pretty basic stuff. And I'm going to assume that most of you guys are fully aware as to how a chat application works in 2018. So I'm not going to go into all of the boring details. What I will go over is how I am going to send a message to user A over here. So this is actually Arya Stark on the left side. And for the pixel in the middle, I'm actually logged in as Jon Snow, as you kind of saw earlier. And so if I wanted to click on Arya Stark, I can start sending messages this way, or I can click on the brand new message on the top over there. And to compose a new message, I can click on Arya Stark and it'll lead me back into the chat log over here in the green. Okay, so let's see. If I type in a message over here, it should kind of refresh this top row over here for Jon Snow, which is this account. So let's see, here we go. How are you? And just hit the send or enter, and you'll see that this message at the very top is updated with this over there. 1, 2, 3, hit the send one more time. And again, you'll see that this guy updates on the left side. All right, so that's pretty good stuff. And the next major piece of functionality that we should look at is the actual chat log whenever we are exchanging messages in real time. All right, so if I click on this guy over here, we'll see 1, 2, 3 on the left and 1, 2, 3 on the right. And this is Arya Stark, so I will try to send a message as her. So, hey, John, didn't you die and come back from the dead? And let's just hit the send button over here. You'll see the message pop up. And then on the left side, you'll see that same message, but kind of in the reverse order, right? This is the account we are sending from, and this is the user that we are receiving the message from. All right, so pretty basic stuff. You shouldn't be too confused as to how this works. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have used more than one chat application by now. All right, so moving on here, the final question we should probably ask here is, how exactly are we going to support all of the data that we need in order to get a fully functional chat application, right? Well, we are going to use Firebase, and for those of you guys that are not aware of what exactly is Firebase, well, it is a cloud architecture platform that is owned by Google. And the great thing about Firebase is that it's relatively easy to set up. It's free if you just want to start testing out your application to see what's possible. And the last thing that's really awesome about Firebase is that it's also relatively cheap if you want to take your data to production and support it for production purposes. Okay, awesome stuff. And in order to start off this brand new series and for me to kind of show you how to build out this awesome application, I'm going to have to first show you how to kind of create your account inside of this application. So let me just sign out again. And in order to create an account, we first have to authorize an account And you do that in two ways. First, you can either create a brand new account or you can just log into a previous account. So this is the registration page, which we will have to learn how to create in today's video. We have 3 fields: username, email, password. We can also select a photo up here. And upon selecting that photo, we'll bring that back into this circle over here. You can change the photo again if you want, or just leave it as that. And once you fill out this information, you'll create a brand new account. And again, we are going to have to also create this page, which is the login activity screen. And this guy allows you to log back into your previous account. All right, so these are the 2 screens we are going to work on in today's lesson. And we are going to get started by creating a brand new project inside of Android Studio. And then we'll look at how to create a new account inside of Firebase console as well. So let's get started right now. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to the Kotlin coding session for today's video. The way we are going to start off here is to create a brand new project inside of Android Studio. So just go ahead and hit File, New, and New Project. You should be presented with this creation wizard guy with a couple of fields down below that we have to fill out. But before I do that, why don't I go over the Android Studio version that I'm using in today's video. So you can see I am on 3.13, which is built on June 4th of 2018. The version that you're going to use might be a little bit different, but don't be too concerned. What we are going to do in today's video should still work regardless. All right, so having said that, why don't we proceed by filling out the application name over here. So I'm going to call this guy Kotlin Messenger like so. Company domain, I'm going to leave it as letsbuildthatApp.com. Project location, make sure you save it somewhere that you can find a little bit later on. And finally, make sure to include the Kotlin support. And let's move on by clicking next. I'm just going to leave the defaults here as API 15 and also leave these unchecked. So again, moving on to the next screen, the activity I will use for today's video is just going to be the easiest one for us to use, which is the empty activity. So double click on that. And then I believe this is the last screen. We just want to use the defaults again. And the activity name is going to be called main activity. And make sure you have these 2 checkboxes checked out. All right, so that should be the last of the options. And once you hit the finish button, you'll get your project to be created by Android Studio. It might take a while for the project to actually complete. So just give it some time and you should be done relatively soon. So that looks pretty good. And let me just resize this so that you guys can see what's going on here. And what do we have inside of our editor right now? Well, we have a main activity open, which looks like this. You can actually run your project inside of your simulator right off the bat. Just hit this run button and double click on the emulator that you need and just run it inside of your emulator. All right, so it's going to build, and down below it's also downloading a lot of the dependencies that are inside of one of these build Gradle files. And once it's done, you'll see your brand new application launched inside of your emulator. So hopefully that is not too confusing. And once you have all of this done, we are kind of ready to move on to actually building out our application, right? So the first thing we need to build here is the registration screen for our application. It kind of looks like this. We have this greenish background, a couple of these text fields in the middle, and this registration right below. We'll add on some of these other features perhaps in a later video, but in today's lesson, let's kind of get the main components in our screen first, and let's move on from there. Okay, so having said that, what do we want to do inside of our project? Well, why don't we go ahead and open the application as well as some of these directories, and make sure you're inside of this Android view mode. It's a little bit easier to work with. And double click on activity main. So here we go. We have our hello world screen over there. If you want to zoom in a little bit, you can click on that. I feel like 50% looks pretty good on my screen, so hopefully you guys can see what's going on. And let's see, we are currently in the design mode, which is easier to modify. So for example, you can click on this guy and let's wipe it out by hitting the backspace. Kind of disappears from your component tree. You can click on constraint layout and you should be able to see this panel. If you want to see more options, you can click on that. if you want to change the background color, you can click on color, hit on Android, and pick whatever you want. We're going to use Holo Green Light right now. And once you make some of these changes, you can actually hit this instant run button. And those changes that you introduce inside of your application should be able to show themselves relatively quickly inside of your emulator. So if you click on this button, it actually takes quite a while to launch. And just make sure to use the instant run whenever you can. Saves you a little bit of time. Okay, so that looks good. And let's see, the first component we are going to introduce inside of our screen here is the username text field. So let me just leave it up on the screen for now. And why don't we go ahead and click on the text little panel on the left side, and let's just use this plain text guy by dragging it in and just dropping it into our view here. So the moment that you drag this in, you can kind of move this around anywhere that you want, right? And the first thing I would like to do is to make this guy a white background color. So if you're still inside of this mode, the more options mode, you can change the background color. Hit the color, hit the Android little toggle. Let me go all the way down to the bottom, double click on that, and you can change the white color like so. And I noticed that whenever you do that, the height actually shrinks a little bit. So we'll fix that a little bit later on. And the first thing I would like to do is to perhaps give this username guy right here some width so that it matches the left and right edges of our screen. So to do that, you drag this dot to the left side, drag this dot to the right side, and I'm also going to drag this up to the top so that I can bind it to the top edge, and that'll just make it a little bit easier for us later on. So go ahead and do that as well. For the layout height over here, you can modify this to be something like 100 dp, so dp for density pixels, and that's what 100 looks like. Obviously that's a little bit taller, so I'm just going to leave it as 50 dp. All right, so looking a lot better than what we had before. You'll see these squiggly lines on the left and right sides. If you want to make sure that it wraps or it extends all the way to the left and right edges, you just want to change the wrap content to match constraint, and voila, there you go. It currently now matches the entire width of the screen there. So that is looking pretty solid. And now we are ready to move on to the email and password guys. And let's see, text over here, we have this email text view, and just drag that in there. And you also have password numeric and passwords. So let's drag that guy inside of the screen. And there we go. We have this guy, which we can change to the white background. So make sure to click on more options, hit on that, click on color, Android, and also white like so. And you can do the same thing for this guy. Background, it's a little bit tedious, but we'll have to do this nonetheless. And so that looks pretty good. Let's go back to this little bit of option panel on the right side. For the hint, you can say, let's see, I believe this is email. So just type that in, you'll get email. For the password, you can say password as well. And for this, you probably want to use the hint of username and just type that in there. To wipe out the text, you can just hit backspace. And there you go. We have username, email, and password. And let's modify our app now by kind of making the UI look a little bit better. So I might be doing this a little bit faster than usual, but this should be pretty self-explanatory as to what is going on. I'm going to kind of constrain this to the left and right of the username. And let's make this guy match constraint for the width. That'll expand it out a little bit. To match this up to the left and right, you can just modify the 8 and the 8 over there to 0. And so that looks a lot better compared to what it was previously. And now what you can do is for this username, if you just modify the left and right edges, it'll kind of slide over the email as well. So hopefully that helps. Makes your life a lot easier in terms of modifying the UI a little bit later on. For the email, for the wrap content, let's give this guy 50 dp as well. And I'm just going to repeat what I did a little bit earlier. So click on that. Make sure to bind it to the email, and I will change this to be, let's see, 0. And this probably wants to be match constraint. And the right side, we'll give that guy a 0. For the layout height, use 50 dp as well. All right. So that is looking pretty nice, and we are now ready to see what it looks like inside of the emulator. So again, click on the instant run whenever you can, and the changes should show up momentarily. It takes a little while to build when you introduce a lot of changes, but once you have it, it's going to look really, really solid, kind of like that. All right, so that looks great. And let's see, for the top edge, I would like to make it 32 as well. So bring that in, and I'm going to hit my shortcut for instant run, and that's going to make my change appear right over there. So it's going to just show up right now, and there we go. The 32 edge looks like that. And so one tip that I have for you right now is if you want to modify your properties or attributes a little bit quicker, you can just hit the text view mode. And so over the left side of this username, I want to give it a padding left. So padding left of, I don't know, 20 dp. That'll push that to the left by 20. And you can obviously give this whatever you want. So this is a lot faster than the design mode. And I find myself often going back and forth between these two views just to make the modifications a little bit faster. So make sure to just do whatever feels natural to you, and you should be okay. And that looks pretty good. That's kind of the UI that we want for our registration screen. So what I would like to move on to now is to actually access these fields inside of my activity file. So you can kind of see these fields over here. Let's go back to the design. They have an ID on the top right. So if I click on the edittext too, that is the ID for each of these text fields. And the better thing to do is to actually give it something that is a little bit more meaningful. So I'm going to say username, edit text, and this is going to be for the registration screen. And that's the naming convention that I'll use. Make sure that every time you update this, you want to refactor all of the fields inside of your project. So I'm just going to click on that and then also hit on the yes so that I don't have to hit on that again. And let's see, I'm going to modify this as well to be, let's see, email, edit text, and this is for the register screen. So one last one for the password. We're going to say password and edit text. I'm just going to keep it all lowercase for now to make it a little bit more consistent. And we are pretty much done with the screen of our registration page. The next thing we would like to move on to is to access those fields somehow inside of our activity, right? So main activity pretty much represents this screen right now. You can actually access your text fields relatively easy using the Kotlin language. And let me just show you how that works by saying, let's see, edit text. You can see your text fields pop up right here in the autocomplete. And let's just try to see what's inside of the email text field right now. So you can say email, edit text, register. And over here, you can say text like so. To get the actual string inside of your text field, you have to say toString like that. Now, to declare a variable inside of Kotlin, you just have to say val or var, but val is a constant, which is a little bit better. So I'll just use val for now, so that equal. And you'll notice that whenever you access your text fields in Kotlin, you have to actually implement or import the synthetic library for your layout, activity main, which is that guy. And that's kind of how you have access to your text fields. All right, so one last one I would like to access is the password text field. So let's say password edit text, and just type in text and toString like that. Okay guys, so now that we have access to email and password, wouldn't it be nice if we can actually see what these values are somehow? Well, the way I'm going to do that is to use log.d, and this is going to log a debug message inside of logcat below over here. And for the d command, you have to provide a tag and a message. So let's just do that. The tag, I'm going to say main activity, which is what this class is. For the message, you can type whatever you want. I'm going to say email is colon, and let me just add on the email string at the very end there. The other message I would like to log out is the password. So we'll just do something very similar. And for the tag, make sure to use a string. So let me type that out correctly. And for the message, I'm going to say password and just colon. And I'm going to use string interpolation with a $sign and just type in the variable name right after that. You'll have that in string format. Okay, So having all of that written out, why don't we run our application right now? I'm going to go ahead and use the Pixel 2 and make sure to check this box over here so that you can use this emulator for future launches. And so that's going to make it a lot faster to run our app now. And so running that, we should be able to see something down below. Make sure you have your emulator selected over here. The actual application is Kotlin Messenger. This verbose, you can change it down to debug. And let's see, main activity, right? So you can see that email is colon and password colon is right over here. And the reason why you're not seeing anything on the right side is because the email is currently blank. Inside of here is actually the hint, which is not the actual text. So why don't I go back into activity main and let's just type in some text over here. So just double click on that and just start typing and you'll modify the text. You can say my email at gmail.com, hit enter, and for the password you can say 123 like that and try to run your code again. Let's just use instant change and you'll see down here that your email is now my email at gmail.com and your password is whatever you typed in that field. All right, so let me just hit backspace on the text there to remove that and hit backspace down there as well. Okay, so that's looking not too shabby. And what I would like to do for my application here is to somehow introduce this register button right below the text fields. So let's just do that right now by going back into the main layout file. And why don't I close out the logcat to get some more space and head on over to the buttons panel on the left side. So button over there, drag this sucker into your view somehow. Let me just do this rather quickly by pitting this to the right and left over there. You want to change the layout width to match constraint to expand the button. If you want to match the left and the right, you want to change the padding to 0 to kind of space it out evenly. And your button looks pretty good. You want to double click on that, hit the register for the text, hit enter, and you'll get the register button looking like so. If you apply the instant changes, you should be able to see your button pretty quickly. And there we go. That's our register button. It doesn't look exactly like what I have over here, but we should be okay with this for now. And what I would like to do is to give my button over here some kind of ID that makes a little bit more sense. The button, I'm going to call it register and button. And let's just give this a register at the end as well. So it's the register button for our registration screen. Okay, so with this button ID, let's head on back to the main activity. And what I would like to do is every time I press on this button, I would like to fire off some kind of action. And for example, I would like to print out what the email and password is when I press on this register button over there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because later on, I actually want to perform the registration authentication through Firebase whenever I hit that button. So hopefully that makes sense. And let's just do that by accessing our button, so register button. That's that guy over there. You can say dot and set on click listener. Now the easier one to use is this bottom one with the dot dot dot. So let's just use that and hit enter. And for this lambda expression over here between these two braces, we can type whatever we want really. So I'm going to cut all of that code and put that in there and remove those spaces. And let's try to see what this change does for our app right now. I'm going to hit the register and you'll see that it kind of logs out our two messages below. And you can now type in here, so sample at test.com and 111, hit the register. You'll now see the print statement saying whatever you just typed in inside of these two text fields. Okay, so pretty awesome stuff. And now the last thing I would like to move on to is to actually show you how to include this last bit of functionality at the very bottom over here. So clicking onto that, you should actually launch your login activity, which looks like that, right? So how exactly do you do that? Well, we have to first start off by introducing this button or this text down below. So I'm going to show you how to do that by heading back into activity main. And for the bottom text right here, I'm just going to use a text view. So text view looks like that. And this guy will be the What do we have here? Already have. So already have an account and question mark. Hit the enter. Make sure to constrain this into the left over there, the right all the way on that side, and you should be okay. That's all I want to do for now. If you want to change the text to something white like that, you can modify the text color either in here or you can do it in the text editor. I feel like this is a little bit easier, so just click on that. And you can say text color and this guy Android white. See, that's a lot faster. If you want to change the text style to be something like bold, you can do that. You can also say text size and give it something like 16 SP. And so whenever you're declaring dimensions for text fields and buttons, you should use DP for density pixels instead. All right, so that's pretty good. Let's try to apply this change over here and see what our application looks like now. We should have a bit of text over there. So that's a pretty good place for us to kind of hook in some more functionality for our application. What I'm going to do is to go back into design mode for this. I'm going to give this text over here an ID that makes sense. So that's a text view. I'm going to say already, so you have account underscore text view, and that looks pretty good. Let's see, text view at the end. Let's make this a lowercase v with the underscore just to keep it a little bit more consistent here. And so let's head back into main activity and try to fire off some kind of action every time I tap on already have account down there, right? So you just do the same thing. You can say already have account text view, set on click listener, click on that, and you can say log D over here. Tag is main activity. And for the message, try to show login activity. All right, so I'm going to hit the instant change and hopefully I can see my app right now. And so every time you tap on this guy, you'll see that we have try to show login activity over there. And so that's pretty good. Make sure to type in this filter message, and that way you can see your log messages a lot easier. And so the question now is, how exactly do we show a new activity every time we click on that text view, right? So I'm going to click on that and show a new screen. So whenever I say activity, what I really mean is a new screen, really. So the way to show a new screen is to create a new activity inside of your app. I'm going to create a new file to represent this activity. Let's call this login activity. Hit the OK. And the class is going to be called login activity. We're going to subclass with the colon, and the subclass is going to be app combat activity. And you want to close it off with the brace over here. You actually need to initialize it with this bit of syntax, so parentheses and parentheses, and you should be good to go with that bit of code there. Now, this right here is just the compatibility activity. If you forget what this guy is called, just go back to your first activity, and it's that right over there. All right, so this is our login activity, and the first thing that you usually override is the onCreate function. So override that and use the one that just comes with the save instant state bundle like that. And what you can do is you want to make sure that you have some kind of view for your new activity, right? So this is the view for my activity, and it's actually going to come from a layout file. So if you look at main activity, what's happening over here is that we set the content view to activity main, which is the layout over there. And for our login, we would like to create something very similar. So just right click on that and create a resource file. This guy, we will call it activity, and login is a pretty good name. So inside of here, you can drag some kind of text view and give this hello world or whatever you want to call it. And that's going to be our temporary view for now. Inside of login activity, we want to say set content view. The resource ID is going to be r.layout.activity login, like so. All right, so that's all we need for now. And inside of main activity, we actually want to launch this login activity every time we click on this button over here, right? And that's going to be handled inside of this bit of code. So already have account text. We are going to say, launch the login activity somehow. And the way to do this is to make a call to start activity. So this requires you to pass in some kind of intent. And so let me create it for you right above. The intent will be an intent object over here, intent. And this takes in a couple of different parameters. We are going to use, I believe, this one over here. So what you got to do is actually pass in a context and the login activity class. The syntax might be a little bit tricky, so I'll just show you what it is. The intent is right over here. And then for the second argument, we are going to say login activity : and class.java. This will represent the actual activity class. Okay, so hopefully you're not too confused as to what that is doing, but that's how you create an intent inside of Kotlin. And once you have that, you can run your application again, and hopefully you can get something interesting inside of your app. So I can tell you right now that it's going to crash once I hit this. So hit that, and you see that the application crashes, right? So the message will usually show up in the red inside of logcat, and you really have to understand what you're looking for. So let me show you what the message says. Unable to find explicit activity, and it actually gives you the login activity over there. And finally, it tells you, have you declared this activity inside of your Android manifest file? So inside of here, you want to provide an actual activity that represents the login activity. So we'll do just that. And you can say activity like that. And for the name, give it login activity. Close that off, and you should be okay. I think that's all we need for now. So why don't we launch our application again by hitting this run button over there. We'll see our application show up. We'll hit the already have an activity or an account button. And there you go. You see the hello world all the way at the top left, which is what we kind of have inside of this file over there, right? So that's pretty much how we launch this activity. And what you want to do is you pretty much want to apply the same changes to this layout file. For example, if you want to give it a background color, you can do this as well. And so I'm just going to do that, remove the hello world. And let's see, we probably want to provide some of the text components. So I'm just going to drag that in there, that as well. So this is actually not what I want. I actually want the email over there and the password over here, and then a button as well. All right, so now if you run your application inside of your emulator, you should be able to start seeing your green screen for the login activity, which is this guy. And obviously the UI components aren't going to be perfect. If you want to download the source code that shows you how to actually make your UI look something like this, make sure to head on over to the download link in the description below. In the very next video, we are going to head back into main activity. And inside of this bit of code right here for the register button, for the button right there, we are going to look at how to perform the Firebase authentication to create a user with, let's see, email and password. Alrighty, everybody, I believe that's going to wrap it up for the very first lesson inside of this brand new series. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Android development, I will be releasing a full paid course sometime in the next month, so make sure to check back on the website whenever that happens. If you have any questions or comments regarding this lesson, make sure to leave that comment down below. If you want to download the source code for everything that you saw in today's video, you can find the link to that down below as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something new today, and hopefully I will see you in the second episode. Bye-bye, guys.